I still remember the exact moment my phone buzzed with that photo because it felt like the universe was mocking me. There it was, my parents standing proudly beside my sister, dressed like royalty, under a chandelier so massive it looked like it could light up a small city. The caption read, "A night to remember, worth every penny. Every penny. $210,000 for my sister's debutante ball." Meanwhile, just 3 weeks earlier, I had been sitting in a hospital hallway, shaking, begging those same parents for $74,000 to save my little daughter's life. And they told me they couldn't help. So let me ask you right now, before you hear anything else, was I wrong for what I did next? Or would you have done the same thing if you were me? I want you to understand something clearly from the start. This isn't about jealousy over a fancy party. This is about betrayal, priorities, and the moment I realized that in my family, love had a price tag, and my child wasn't worth enough. When people hear the headline version of this story, they immediately form opinions. Some say, parents don't owe you anything. Others say, family should always come first. I lived in the gray area between those two statements, and it nearly destroyed me. So before you judge me, let me take you back to the beginning, to how my family worked long before the hospital machines started beeping and the word, surgery, became my worst nightmare. Growing up, my parents were always very clear about one thing: appearances mattered. We weren't royalty, but my mother acted like we were adjacent to it. Every holiday had to be perfect, every photo frame worthy, every milestone celebrated bigger than the last. My father was the quieter one, the type who let my mother steer the ship while he wrote the checks and nodded along. And then there was my sister, Emily. She was the golden child in the most textbook way possible. Straight A's, cheer captain, prom queen vibes without even trying. I was not that. I wasn't a problem child, but I was invisible in comparison. If Emily sneezed, my mom rushed for tissues. If I broke my arm, my mom asked if I could wait until after Emily's recital to go to urgent care. Still, I grew up thinking that's just how families are. Someone shines brighter. Someone stands in the shadow. You adapt. I adapted by becoming independent early. I worked part-time jobs, paid for most of my college expenses myself, moved out as soon as I could. Emily, on the other hand, stayed close to home, leaned into our parents' world, and soaked up every bit of their attention and financial support. I didn't resent her for it back then. I told myself it didn't matter, because I was building my own life. Then I got married, and a few years later, I had my daughter, Lily. The moment she was placed in my arms, everything shifted. Suddenly, my childhood wounds felt small compared to the fierce, terrifying love I felt for this tiny human. Lily was curious, stubborn, loud, and joyful. She laughed with her whole body. She made my world bigger and scarier all at once. My parents were politely interested. They visited on holidays, brought expensive gifts, took photos for Facebook, and left. Emily doted on Lily in her own way. But even that felt performative sometimes, like she was playing the role of fun aunt, rather than actually bonding. For the first few years, life was normal. Busy, chaotic, but normal. Then one afternoon, Lily complained about being tired. That turned into her getting tired all the time. Then bruises started appearing in places a 4-year-old shouldn't have bruises. Then came the fevers. I remember sitting in the pediatrician's office, watching her flip through Lily's chart, her face growing more serious with every page. When she said the words, "We need to run some tests," my stomach dropped. When the tests came back, and we were sent to a specialist, I started to feel like I was underwater, hearing everything but not quite processing it. The diagnosis came like a punch I never saw coming. A rare condition, treatable, but only with a specific surgery and follow-up care that wasn't fully covered by insurance. The doctor explained the procedure, the risks, the odds, all in a calm, practiced voice. All I heard was the number, $74,000. That was the out-of-pocket cost we needed to come up with quickly. Without the surgery, Lily's condition would worsen. It wasn't an immediate death sentence, but it was a ticking clock. I nodded like I understood, like I was capable, But inside, I was screaming. My husband and I did what any parents would do. We emptied our savings. We sold things. We applied for assistance programs. We talked to the hospital's financial office until they knew us by name. We still came up short. And that's when I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I called my parents and asked for help. I didn't start with the full amount. I didn't want to scare them. I explained the situation, Lily's condition, the surgery, the timeline. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. My mother sighed, the way she does when she's inconvenienced. My father cleared his throat. I said the number, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. $74,000. I told them we could sign something, pay them back over time, whatever they wanted. I wasn't asking for a gift. I was asking for my daughter's life. My mother said, "That's a lot of money." I reminded her that they'd helped Emily with her condo down payment, with her car, with her graduate school tuition. My father said, "This is different." Different. I asked how. My mother said something that still echoes in my head. "We have to think about our future, too." I didn't know what to say to that. I sat there, gripping the phone, staring at Lily's coloring books scattered across the floor, thinking about how her future was apparently less important than theirs. They told me they couldn't help. Not that they wouldn't, that they couldn't. They suggested crowdfunding. Loans. "You're resourceful," my mother said, like it was a compliment. When the call ended, I sat on my kitchen floor and cried until I couldn't breathe. My husband held me, but I could feel his anger vibrating through him. That was the moment something inside me cracked. We managed, barely. Through a combination of loans, donations from friends, and a miracle from a nonprofit organization, we got Lily her surgery. The day she went into the operating room was the longest day of my life. When the doctor finally came out and said it went well, I collapsed into a chair, sobbing with relief. Lily recovered slowly but steadily. She smiled again. She ran again. She lived. And for that, I would have sold my soul. During all of this, my parents checked in occasionally, texts that said, "Thinking of you?" Or, "Let us know how it goes." No visits. No offers of help beyond words. I kept my distance, partly because I was exhausted, partly because I didn't trust myself not to explode. Emily sent a gift basket once. I said thank you and tried not to think too hard about it. Then, months later, when Lily was finally stable and life was starting to resemble normal again, my mother called me, her voice bubbling with excitement. "We're planning Emily's debutante ball," she said. I thought I misheard her. Debutante ball. Emily was 24. My mother explained that it was a modern version, a celebration of her accomplishments and her entrance into elite society. I stayed quiet, listening as she talked about venues, designers, guest lists. At one point, she mentioned the budget, laughing nervously like it was a guilty pleasure. $210,000. I felt like I was outside my body. I said, very calmly, "You told me you couldn't help us." There was another pause. My mother said, "This is different." Again with that word, different. I asked her to explain how a party was different from a life-saving surgery. She got defensive. She said Emily had dreamed of this, that it was important for her future, her connections, her happiness. Happiness. I ended the call before I said something I couldn't take back. The ball happened 3 weeks later. I didn't attend. I told them Lily wasn't feeling well, which wasn't entirely a lie. That night, as photos flooded social media, I sat on my couch with my daughter asleep on my chest, watching strangers praise my parents for being so generous, so supportive, such amazing parents. That's when the photo hit my phone. Worth every penny. I stared at it until my vision blurred. So that was the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause for a second and really think about it. If you were me, if your parents had refused to help save your child but spent nearly 3 times that amount on a sibling's party, what would you do? Would you stay quiet to keep the peace, or would you finally say something, no matter the consequences? Go ahead and comment what you would have done, because at that moment, I felt like whatever choice I made was going to change my family forever. After staring at those comments and replaying that photo in my head for days, something in me hardened. It wasn't just anger anymore, it was clarity. I realized that if I stayed silent, I wasn't being the bigger person, I was being complicit. I was teaching my daughter, even subconsciously, that her life was worth less than appearances and parties. That thought alone made my stomach twist. So I decided to confront them, not in a screaming match, not at a holiday dinner, but in a way they would actually understand. Money had always been their language, so I was going to speak it fluently. I called my parents and asked if we could all sit down and talk, just the four of us. My mother sounded wary but agreed. Emily sounded confused but cheerful, like she genuinely didn't know why this conversation was necessary. We met at my parents' house, the same house where family portraits lined the walls, most of them featuring Emily front and center. Lily stayed home with my husband because I couldn't bear the thought of her being there if things went badly. We sat in the living room, and for a few minutes it was painfully polite. Small talk, weather, work. Then my mother asked why I wanted to meet. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady when I said I wanted to talk about priorities. That immediately put her on edge. She crossed her arms. My father leaned back in his chair. Emily frowned slightly, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. I laid everything out. I talked about the hospital nights, the fear, the loans we were drowning in. I reminded them of the call where I asked for help, and the answer they gave me. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just stated facts. Then I talked about the ball, the cost, the timing, the message it sent. I asked them directly to explain to me how they justified it. My mother said I was being unfair, that I was mixing two separate issues. My father said they didn't know how serious Lily's condition was. That was a lie, and we all knew it. Emily finally spoke up, her voice small, saying she never asked for the ball, that it was my parents' idea. That might have been true, but it didn't erase the reality. I told them I wasn't asking for apologies. I was asking for accountability. That's when I told them what I had decided. I said that, until they acknowledged what they had done and made some effort to repair the damage, I needed distance, not out of spite, but out of self-respect and to protect my family. The room went silent. My mother looked genuinely shocked, like the idea that I could set boundaries had never occurred to her. My father's jaw tightened. Emily started crying, saying I was tearing the family apart. I left shortly after, my heart pounding, my hands numb. I cried in my car, not because I regretted it, but because I finally understood how lonely it felt to choose yourself in a family that benefits from you staying quiet. The fallout was immediate. My mother sent long texts about how hurt she was, how she never meant to make me feel less than, how families shouldn't keep score. My father stopped calling altogether. Emily tried to play mediator, telling me I should apologize. For the sake of peace. I didn't respond. For the first time in my life, I let the silence sit. Weeks turned into months. Lily continued to recover. She went back to school. She laughed without getting tired. Every time I watched her play, I felt a surge of fierce pride mixed with lingering anger. We were still paying off loans, still cutting corners, but we were together, and she was alive. That mattered more than anything. Then, something unexpected happened. My parents' social circle started asking questions. Why wasn't I at family gatherings? Why hadn't they seen Lily? Why were there whispers about money and hospitals? My parents, who lived for appearances, were suddenly uncomfortable. One afternoon, my father showed up at my door unannounced. He looked older somehow, smaller. He asked if we could talk. We sat at my kitchen table, the same place where I had cried on the floor months earlier. He told me that losing access to his granddaughter had forced him to think in ways he never had before. He admitted that they had prioritized the wrong things, that they had been blinded by tradition and image. He didn't excuse it, but he also didn't fully apologize. Still, it was more than I'd ever gotten before. A week later, my mother called. She cried. Real tears, not the performative kind. She said she didn't know how to fix what she'd broken, but that she wanted to try. She offered financial help, not as a gift, but as repayment for the harm. It wasn't the full amount, and it didn't erase the past, but it was a start. Emily and I had our own conversation. She admitted she'd been living in a bubble, benefiting from favoritism without questioning it. She apologized, genuinely. It didn't magically make us close, but it softened something between us. We're not a perfect family now. We probably never will be. There are still awkward moments, still unspoken tensions. But my parents show up differently. They come to Lily's school events. They ask about her health and actually listen. They're learning, slowly, that love isn't about how grand the gesture looks from the outside. Looking back, I know some people will say I overreacted, that I should have let it go, that money shouldn't tear families apart. But it wasn't about money. It was about worth. It was about drawing a line and saying, my child matters. And if that makes me the villain in someone else's story, I can live with that. So now I'll ask you again, knowing how it all played out, was I wrong for standing up to my parents and risking my relationship with them to protect my daughter and my own self-respect? If you were on my side, like this video. If you think I went too far, tell me why. Subscribe for more stories like this, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments. I'll see you all in the next story.